get up in the morning, you need to wash your hands. How do you wash your hands? So interestingly enough, there are two different approaches. I mean, there are probably more. Two approaches that I'm familiar with. One is to wash each hand alternately 3 times, and one is to wash each hand alternately 4 times. Where does that extra time come from? So according to some opinions, the first time that you wash your hands, all you're doing is you're washing off the residue of what's called tumah, of spiritual impurity. And then you need to wash your hands alternately 3 times. According to other opinions, washing your hands 3 times includes washing off the spiritual impurity, the tumah, and that's enough. So that's the first thing you need to do, is to wash your hands. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a whole Indian over here. I don't want to get involved with it. There are different Siddurim will give you a different order about how to do things. Yeah. What makes the most amount of sense, to me anyway, is that you get up in the morning and you go to the bathroom. That's the first thing to do, because that's what most people need to do. Yeah. Right? After you've been to the bathroom, and then you can wash your hands, and you can recite the bracha of Al Natilat Yadayim, and you can recite the bracha of Asher Yotza Es Adam B'Chochma, right? The bracha that you recite after you come out of the bathroom.
That's how you're washing your hands the second time, you're saying?
Yeah. Bless you. Atiswi.
Yes. Can you go over what is Asher Yotza? And then I know the prayer is what you say.
Asher Yotze is a very, very beautiful prayer. It's a very, very important prayer. It's just making us more appreciative of the wonder of our bodies. So Asher Yotze, it's all about. I mean, basically, it describes how your body works, the delicacy of your body, right? Which means that if something is closed that's supposed to be open, and something is open that's supposed to be closed, then your body is not going to work. It's not going to function properly. I always tell over. I think it's something extraordinary. It really is. Here in Israel, I don't know if this works in abroad, but in Israel, you go to the doctor over here. It doesn't matter which doctor you go to. Invariably, there'll be a chart up in the doctor's office. Whatever his speciality is, will be the center of the body, which means all the other parts of your body are going to be affected by whatever this person's speciality is. Right? It's interesting. It really is. So if you go to somebody who deals with toes, right? Yeah. And you have a thing up there telling you that your toes are really the sort of like the indication of the healthiness of your body, and if you keep your toes healthy, then the rest of your body will be healthy.
Same with the dentist.
Go to the dentist, he'll tell you the same about your teeth, right? Go to the eye doctor, he'll tell you the same about your eyes, and go to the kidney doctor, he'll tell you the same about your kidneys. And the emphasis is like it's all true. Yeah. It's all 100% true. It really is. That each part of your body, if anyone's ever had an ingrown toenail, yeah, they're painful things, right? Ingrown, it's a tiny little thing that grows the wrong way, right? And all of a sudden you are incapacitated. You can't do anything.
I don't usually put bamba on my toes.
Maybe you should start. The idea is very, very simple. Right? The idea is very, very simple. We have to acknowledge and appreciate what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. Going to the bathroom is the most mundane thing that you're ever going to do.
You say the physical, make it into spiritual.
You're taking not just the physical. This is the very climax of all physicality is going to the bathroom, because what are you doing? Your body is getting rid of all the waste that it doesn't need, and it's allowing you to continue functioning, right? Mm-hmm. Which means that there's nothing spiritual about going to the bathroom, and yet we make a blessing over that as well. It's important to know this. It really is. I must have told this over lots of times. I'm going to tell it over again because it's something which is very powerful. In a different school I teach in, one of the girls there had an emergency appendicitis in the middle of the year.
What is that?
Had appendix.
Her appendix was inflamed.
And they had to get it out.
Intestines, appendix?
It's in your stomach, yeah. Oh. On the right-hand side, if you want to just, poke around a little bit and see what's in there. But the appendix actually is a fascinating little piece of your body, because doctors they're not really quite sure why we have them. They don't seem to do anything. But sorry? What?
Like one that we don't use anymore that we probably used when we were...
At some point, something, whatever. Some people here are probably still using them then. So she said she got up at the end of the year and she spoke. And she said something very beautiful and something very powerful. She said, first of all, she said she's never going to take the bracha of Asher Yotza for granted ever again. And then she said something to everybody. She said, don't wait for your bodies to go wrong before you appreciate what it is that you've been given. And I think it's the most incredibly powerful little thing. It really is. And we've spoken about this on many occasions. You wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, you can see. Big deal, right? I mean, yesterday you could see, and tomorrow you'll be able to see, and big deal, yeah? And you move your hands, you get out of bed, your legs work, everything is working the way it's supposed to work. And we don't recognize that it really is a big deal. It really is. The bracha of Asher Yotzer is there to teach us that our body has been given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's been given to us in order to serve Him properly. And that's why it's a bracha, which needs to be said with it. It really needs to be said very seriously. It really does. Always it always concerns me when I see people sort of like coming out of the bathroom and reciting Asher Yotzer like on the move. They're not even thinking very much about what they're saying. They're just mumbling the words as they go along. If you can do it, I always tell everybody, if you can do it, so just stand still for a moment and say the bracha. Don't do anything else at the same time. People are coming out. They're on their phones already and they're making the bracha, and it's not good. Yeah.
I was just going to say along those lines, for those who aren't inclined to like memorize something like that, they have most bookstores one of these little carry things.
A laminated Asher Yotzer card.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Are you ever exempt from saying Asher Yotzer?
Yes, you are actually. The only time you're exempt from saying Asher Yotzer is when you're suffering from some kind of a stomach ailment and you're going to the bathroom the whole time, which means you're coming and going.
Why? 100 bracha a day?
Yeah, that'll be 100 brachas an hour, I would imagine. Actually,
Memorize
then you wouldn't need that laminated sheet, that's for sure. But the idea is very simple, right? That you're supposed to make a bracha Asher Yotzer when you've finished going to the bathroom. Somebody who's suffering from diarrhea or something that's causing them to go to the bathroom the whole time. So even though they right now they're finished, but they're not really finished. And they know that whenever, in a few moments, in a few minutes, they're going to go back again. And if that's the case, then you would not have to say an Asher Yotzer. And perhaps the only other thing that we need to know about Asher Yotzer is until when can you recite Asher Yotzer? You can recite it until you need to go to the bathroom again, right? Which means that obviously the best, you should say Asher Yotzer as soon as you come out and you've washed your hands. You should make the bracha straight away, right?
It's not like eating.
It's not like eating. Well, in a certain sense it is, because by eating also, you're allowed to make the bracha the whole time you're still getting benefit from what you've eaten. That's where this idea of making half an hour, 42 minutes, 45 minutes, 72 minutes, that's where it all comes from, right? According to this idea, you're really getting benefit from having been to the bathroom the whole time until you need to go again. And at that point, then you can't say the bracha anymore, and you have to make it when you come out. But like I said before, obviously the thing to do is to make the bracha immediately. But if you didn't, for whatever the reason, you can still make the bracha afterwards. It's a very beautiful bracha, and it's a bracha that should be taken very seriously. After you've recited that bracha, now again, what you'll find all different kinds of opinions about where, when, how, which to say the bracha. Right over here in the Art Scroll Siddur, they tell you to put on your tefillin first, and then to make the bracha of Al Netilas Yadayim and Asher Yotzer, and then to say Birchsa Torah and Birchsa Shachar. Whatever. I'm telling you, whatever you do, it's going to be okay. Some people do it when they get up, straight away. Some people do it, a little bit later on. Some people do it.
How can you do it with your tefillin on?
Huh?
How can you do it with your tefillin on?
You haven't been to the bathroom. Over here, it's saying that you should do all of your, what are they called, ablutions, no? You should do your ablutions. Right? I bet you never knew that word, did you?
You're not supposed to think of that stuff while you have to fill it on.
Think of what stuff? Think of making a bracha?
Like going to the bathroom and
No.
things of that nature. Really?
There's nothing wrong with thinking about going to the bathroom. What do you do if you're going to go into a state of denial? If you need to go to the bathroom whilst you're wearing your tefillin and you're not allowed to think about it, then,
Somebody told me you're not supposed to,
You're not supposed to have external thoughts, right? But I don't think this is an external thought.
Is it true that when you're whilst you have tefillin on, you're not supposed to break wind?
Yes. Yes, it is. And if you do, you're actually supposed to momentarily lift your tefillin shorosh up off of your head.
So you're not complete with it.
Yeah.
Do a blessing when you put it back on.
No, because you're not taking it off. Don't just lift the bite itself, the black piece, the boxes. the box. Just
Yeah.
lift it up a little bit.
I thought it happens automatically.
Depends.
I was just going to say, Asher Yotzar is actually in morning prayers, which is after all the things.
Yeah. So I'm saying you'll find other Siddurim where you'll find it at the beginning, right at the very beginning.
Yeah, I have one.
Sorry.
I have one where it's after Nerilas.
Al Natilat Yadayim.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Asher Yotzar.
And then there's like Elohei something.
Yeah, Elohai Neshama Shenasati B'Torah, right? That my soul is pure. Anyway, Birchas Torah, again, we've got this machlokes. When you say Birchas Torah, I'm telling you, however you do it, it's going to be fine. If you want to do it when you get to shul, that's okay. If you want to do it before you get to shul, that's also okay.
I don't want to do it.
If you don't want to do it, that's absolutely not okay. When I said whatever you do is okay, not making the brachas is not doing it. So that doesn't count, right?
Sure.
It's not the same thing. Anyway, Shabbos morning. What's going? I'm going to get to shul on Shabbos morning. Shabbos morning, of course, is the davening is much longer than usual. All kinds of things that we need to know. So the regular format of davening until Kriyat Torah, until reading of the Torah, is pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. So you recite. There's an extended Psukei de Zimra, right, which is the all the psalms that are recited before we get to Baruch Hu. If you have the time to say them, very much recommended. They're very beautiful. If you don't have time, it makes more sense to get yourself up to davening to where they're going to say Baruch Hu and the Shema together with the minyan, together with whether you're davening, rather than to invest a lot of time reciting all of the chapters of Psukei de Zimra and then find yourself falling behind. So it's your choice. For a lot of people, they like to come early to shul and they like to spend their time reciting, the Psukei de Zimra very, gently and slowly and with as much meaning as they can. And like I said, if you come for whatever the reason, if everybody else seems to have got to shul earlier than you, and they've started already, so various parts of Psukei de Zimra can be missed out. I don't want to go through that right now, but it's definitely, like I said, better to reach the Shema together with everybody else. So you've got an elongated Psukei de Zimra, you've got the Shema, the brachas of the Shema, then you've got the Amidah. The Amidah, of course, is all centered around Shabbos. And after the Amidah, there's a repetition of the Amidah.
A second, what is this? Could you talk
What?
about what says Kabbalistic things that you might say before you start?
Oh, Harinim is Pilahoidas.
Yeah,
It's a very beautiful idea that you're you know what? Just a word of introduction to Psukei de Zimra. Not because I wasn't going to do this, but because there are certain people here who sometimes make us digress from Shabbos. I'm not mentioning any names. I hope it's clear that I didn't mention any names over here. Right?
You did mention Psukei de
I have
Zimra.
no idea what you're talking about.
Me neither. I'm just assuming that this must be the case, right? The words Psukei de Zimra are it's very interesting. Got a very interesting lesson inside of the words themselves. The words Psukei de Zimra literally mean, Psukim are verses, and Zimra means song. So literally it means verses of song, and that's why Psukei de Zimra is taken, on the whole, it's taken from Sefer Tehillim, from the Book of Psalms. However, the sages teach that the word Zimra can also come from the word Zamor. Lizmor means to prune. Here we've got a resident expert in...
Smira.
Zmira, right? Lizmor, to prune. What do you do when you want to make something ready for the winter, right? If you've got a tree and you want to get it ready for the winter, paradoxically, you cut down a lot of the branches, you cut down a lot of the green foliage in order to bring it down to a much more concentrated version of itself. And then in Mitzvah Hashem, when the spring begins, it's able to rejuvenate in a much more powerful way than it would be able to otherwise. Explain the sage's most beautiful idea. The Psukei de Zimra, which are verses of pruning, are there to prune away the distractions that we have in our minds. Which means that the function of Psukei de Zimra is to get us into the right frame of mind that we're ready to recite Shema and the Amidah in the way that we're supposed to. And I guess on Shabbos we've got the extended Psukei de Zimra, because, in order to get into that Shabbos mode and to be able to daven with that special Shabbos flavor, we need the extra dimensions of chapters that are being recited over here. And that's why you'll see in many Siddurim at the beginning of Baruch She'amar, just before you begin Baruch She'amar, there's a line which says, Hareini mezamen es pi lodot u'lalel shabech et bori. I am inviting my mouth to sing praises to God. Very, very beautiful idea, it really is. It's like, it's fascinating. Our bodies are here in order to serve God, right? But we have to work on getting our bodies to want to do that. So here I am. I'm announcing that I want my mouth to sing praises to God. It's a little bit like the beginning of the Amidah. What do we say in the beginning of the Amidah? Hashem sefatai tiftach ufi agid tilatecha. Right? You open my mouth, and then my lips will be able to sing your praises. The same kind of an idea, right? That we our bodies are something which have to be directed towards serving Hashem. Right? Because the body is a physical dimension, and the physical, of course, is drawn towards the physical. And the idea of Rav Chaim Volozhiner says in his Perush on Pirkei Avos in Ruach Chaim, he says that have a ratz the mitzvah kala, that you should run to do a mitzvah. He says, why do you have to run to do a mitzvah? He says, because your body and your soul don't really share very much in common. Your body is physical and wants physical things, and your soul is spiritual and wants spiritual things. And he says you have to force your body to run after the mitzvahs. Well, okay. I mean, I thought that was interesting, but apparently, thank you. Well, it's just a little late.
It is quite that way.
Good. Okay, we're finally getting to some kind of consensus over here that what I said was interesting. I'm good. Thank you. Anyway, so that's what that's doing over here. Shacharis got repetition of the Amidah, and then after repetition of the Amidah, we've got Kriyas HaTorah. Now, Kriyas HaTorah, of course, as you're all familiar, I'm sure, is very long. On Shabbat, they're going to read an entire Pasha. Of course, it depends on which Pasha you're reading, depends on how long it's going to be. Kriyas HaTorah, so they're going to bring out the Sefer Torah. Again, depending certain times of the year, they'll maybe bring out 2 Sifrei Torah. It depends. If Rosh Chodesh falls out together with Shabbos, then you have 2 Sifrei Torah. Sometimes, on very rare occurrences, you have 3 Sifrei Torah being brought out. That on Shabbos Chanukah, for example, you have Shabbos, the Shabbos Torah reading, you have the Rosh Chodesh Shabbat, you have the Rosh Chodesh reading, and you have the Chanukah reading. And you're going to bring out 3 different Sifrei Torah. That doesn't happen very often. It's like an exciting moment in most. It's the longest benching as well, right? Something you need to be aware of. Allow yourself at least another, 27 seconds, I believe, to be able to recite everything that needs to be said. How does Kriyas HaTorah, how does it work? So the Torah portion is split up into 7 pieces. 7 people are called up. You're all familiar with the way that it works, right? The Kohen gets called up first, the Levi gets called up second, and then you have 5 Yisraelim, 5 regular, non-affiliated, non-Kohanim, non-Leviim being called up. The first 2 bits of the Chumash, of the Torah reading, are not allowed to be broken up, which means however they appear in your Chumash, that's how they have to be read. As you get going, right, say for example, you've got a simcha going on and there are lots of people that need to get aliyot, so then at that point you can start adding in more breaks if you need them, right? Now breaks need to be added in the right places. You can't just stop wherever you want. Vayidab Hashem Moshe Lemor, God spoke to Moses saying, what do you say? I don't know. We're calling up somebody else now. You'll just have to wait and see. You can't do that. There are certain places where you can make breaks, certain places where you can't make breaks.
How many can you make?
In theory, you can make as many as you want, so long as there's at least 3 psukim in every single aliyah. And I was once in a bar mitzvah by friends who actually, the Sfarim, I don't know, maybe this might be something which is more done in the Sfari communities, where almost everybody got an aliyah. I mean, the kid was stopping almost every 3 psukim, he was stopping to call somebody else up. Most places they don't do that. However, what is interesting is that sometimes they'll add on an extra aliyah at the end, what's called acharon. After they've called up 7 people, they'll add 1 more. And that's for somebody, if you've got a Kohen or a Levi who needs an aliyah and he wasn't able to receive the Kohen or the Levi aliyah, you can only give it to them at the end. They can't receive it in the middle anywhere. Right? So over there they add in something called Achron, and then the person as a Kohen can be called up. Here, for example, in my shul, the Rav of the shul is a Kohen. And when it comes to the last Parsha in every Sefer, so he gets given the Aliyah, which Chazak is considered to be a great honor to receive that. And the problem is, though, because he's a Kohen, he can't be given, normally it comes in at the end of the 7th Aliyah. But he can't be given that because he's a Kohen, so they make a special stop, and they'll call him up. Number 8, they'll call him up as Achron, and then he'll be given the Aliyah, of Chazak. Right? It's fine, whatever's going on, it's absolutely fine, yeah.
Shmini Atzeres, where anybody and everybody gets called. How do they?
They keep repeating the same parsha over and over again without finishing it. The Zois HaBracha is not very long. I think it's 42 psukim long or something. And what they do is that they don't finish it because the finishing is going to be done by the person who's a Chatan Torah. But they'll just keep repeating it, and you'll see if you take a look at the breaks, if there's enough over there for one, it tells over the brachas to the tribes, right? So if there's enough there in one tribe to be one aliyah, if you've got 3 psukim over there, 3 verses, then they'll stop and then they'll call up somebody else. If not, then they'll put together two tribes in order to reach the prerequisite 3 psukim that are required.
How many people do they normally have to call up in a normal shul on that day?
Well, first of all, I think a normal shul is an oxymoron, isn't it? I don't think I've ever come across anything that... I don't know. But when are we talking about? If you're talking about on Shabbos, so 7 people get called up for the reading of the Torah portion, and then an 8th person gets called up for the maftir, which is what we're going to talk about right now. If you're talking about during the week, on a Monday and a Thursday, it's 3 people. On Simchas Torah, everybody and anybody.
100 people.
Yeah, whatever. Most shuls, when you've got a big community, they've got different Sifrei Torah. They put them out all over the place and they read them from all over.
Apparently, they put one over here, one over there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, otherwise you'll be there forever if you've only got one Sefer Torah. Huh?
Wonder what they do in Bells.
Same thing. In Bells, they've probably got tens of Sifrei Torah that can be taken out and can be read everyone in a different location, and everybody's going to get an aliyah. What is maftir? Maftir is the last few verses of the Torah portion is then read out again, and then the person who received the maftir gets to read the Haftarah as well. What is the Haftarah? The Haftarah is something quite fascinating historically, actually. The Greeks, one of the decrees that the Greeks decreed was that the Jews shouldn't be allowed to read from the Sefer Torah anymore. So the rabbis introduced reading the Haftarah. Now the Haftarah comes normally from the prophets, and you'll find that the Haftarah invariably revolves around the concepts that are found within the Parsha itself. Once the Torah reading was introduced again, the rabbis did not take out the Haftarah. Once it was in, they decided to keep it in, and that's why we have both the Torah reading and the Haftarah. The Haftarah is preceded by 1 bracha, and afterwards the reading, there's another 4 brachas that are recited afterwards, and it's considered to be something. It's interestingly enough, somebody who's in the year of Avelis, if somebody is in a year of mourning for a parent, it's considered to be a very nice thing to give them the reading of the Haftarah, because the more brachas that are recited by a mourner, the more amens that are said in response to the bracha, so the more it helps to raise the soul of the deceased person. That's why you may find in many shuls, if Baruch Hashem they don't have many people who are reciting Kaddish, you may find the same faces, week after week, being given the aliyah for maftir and for the Haftarah, and that's where it comes from. Just as an interesting idea over here, what did the Greeks think they were doing? The Torah is really Tanakh, right? Tanakh is Torah, Nevi'im, Uksuvim. Right? The Torah is the 5 books of Moses. It's the books of all of the prophets, and then you've got the books of the writings as well. What on earth did the Greeks think they were doing if they thought that it was bad to have the Jews reading the Torah? Why did they allow them to read from the prophets instead? Right? Well, they were smart enough to understand that reading the Torah was not a good idea, so why on earth did they let them read from the Haftarah? So there are a few answers that are given. First of all, they knew that if they decreed that it was forbidden to read entirely from the Torah or from the prophets, then the Jews would just go underground and they wouldn't be able to keep track. They wouldn't be able to keep a track of what was going on and whether they were or whether they weren't living the way that they were being told to live. But on top of that, the Greeks had a very fascinating approach to their empire. They had no desire to remove the national identities of the people that lived in their empire. All they wanted to do was to make sure that there was a very healthy dose of Greek culture inside of what they were doing that would allow them to blend in, all the different nationalities would be able to blend into each other, and they would become one more or less homogeneous group. And what they were doing was like this. They didn't want the Jews reading the Torah because they understood that the Torah was, without the Torah, written Torah can't be understood without the oral Torah, right? So they understood that if they stopped them from reading the written Torah, the idea was hopefully to get them to stop learning Torah altogether. However, they let them read from the prophets because the prophets are normally much easier to understand as stories. Right? If you read through the prophets, you'll see most of them, they have a beginning, they have a middle, they have an end, they follow. There's a sequential, I forgot what the word that comes after sequential, but there's a sequential sequence after, if you follow the prophets. And what they thought was they'll let them read the prophets. That way they'll dampen their desire to rebel. It will let them keep their Jewish flavor, but slowly but surely it will take away from them the ability to be able to tap into what Judaism really is. And at some point, they'll turn into a group, just like all the other groups of the nations that existed over there, of Jewish-flavored Greeks. You're looking puzzled, but you should know. Yeah, you should know that if you've ever spent, if you walk around, sometimes you'll see restaurants. There used to be one in Temple Fortune actually, which was kosher style, which is, when you stop and think about it, is bizarre. I mean, if you want to eat kosher, and if you don't want to eat kosher, don't eat kosher. But what would possess anybody to eat non-kosher food that's cooked in a kosher style? Isn't that bizarre?
Well, it means you don't put cheese on your BLT.
No. A kosher style restaurant means that you go and you order corned beef and you order cholent and you order chopped liver. It just doesn't happen to be kosher. That's all. Kosher style, right? Your filter fish, whatever, right?
A lot of restaurants in New York.
And it's bizarre, but what's the pshat? The pshat is very simple. There are a lot of Jews out there who are ethnically Jewish. They feel connected to their Jewish ethnicity. They don't keep anything, right? And they remember the food that they ate, when they were growing up, and they want to eat that food, but they don't keep kosher.
A lot of them will try not to eat this because it goes back to the cheese and hamburger.
Yeah.
Not because
I had a friend in school who would not. He didn't keep kosher at all, but he would not eat meat and milk together.
Right.
It's funny. I went out with some kids and they were like reform, more reform, and I was there. I mean, I didn't keep kosher. I had a beer, and he ordered like a bacon burger, and when she brought it, it had cheese on it. And he was so offended. It's like, take it back.
I say, you know what? I'll tell you something interesting. I say like this, right? It's ridiculous. It's possible. We all understand it's ridiculous. But I've got this fellow that I was in school with. We used to make so much fun of him. He would go off to McDonald's to eat, right? We all kept kosher, and he would go off to McDonald's to eat, but he wouldn't have a milkshake with his hamburger. Or he wouldn't have a cheeseburger. That he wouldn't do. And we used to make so much fun of him, like, it's ridiculous, you're a moron. And I'm telling you today, if this fellow is from, I've got no idea where he is, right? But if this fellow is from, or if he's got any kind of Jewish identity today, it's coming from the fact that he kept that one little thing. It's certainly no thanks to me, that's for sure. If he's from, it's got nothing to do with me. It's despite the fact that we made fun of him when he was a kid, for sure. My in-laws used to know people. On Pesach, there is a custom amongst the Hasidim, it's a big thing, not to call not gebrot. They don't dip their matzah into any liquid. and they won't use matzah flour. They won't mix it together with oil. They can't have kanelach, and they can't have matzah brai, right? And my in-laws had people that they knew who did not gebrok on Pesach, but they ate chometz on Pesach. They didn't keep anything. They just wouldn't eat gebrok on Pesach.
There's no problem. Don't put your matzah in the water.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
They didn't keep kosher at home, and yet they didn't gebrok on Pesach. And it's interesting. I remember, when I first got married, it's like that. These people are weird, First of all, why anybody would forego eating knedlich on Pesach is beyond me, right? But if you don't keep anything anyway. Why are you keeping that? So my wife found out not very long ago, a couple of years ago, that 2 out of 3 of their children have become very frum. Now, I've got no idea, what exactly was what exactly got them to become frum. I don't know. But I'm telling you that not eating gebrok on Pesach had to be some of it. That's what they've got, right? That's their Jewish identity is coming through there. So when people want to eat kosher style, however ridiculous it is, right? They're still attached to their ethnic roots, right? They still want to be able to eat, chicken soup and kanelach and whatever, even though it's not kosher. I don't know. Maybe something will come from it. Maybe it will.
So who am I to laugh at it? That it could.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this kid, taking affront that somebody gave him cheese on his bacon burger, right? Of course, it's absolutely absurd, isn't it?
Right.
But you never know. If this kid ever becomes frum, I'll tell you more than that. If this kid has children who ever become frum, then maybe it's coming from this one last vestige of hey, are you kidding? I'm Jewish. I don't eat this.
Right. It's a good lesson. Someone made an analogy to it. In Bava Metzia, it mentions about a vessel that the fruits fell out. But if there's one fruit left in the vessel,
very good.
The other fruits are part of the vessel.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Very nice. Which means there's something left in there, then you can identify it.
Yeah.
And if you've got something left over here, you can identify. Yeah, you know what? That's a very beautiful idea, actually. I once heard a story. Rav Beryl Wein told over a story. When Rav Beryl Wein used to be a Rav in Miami for years and years, and he was very, very close to the Ponevezher Rav. The Ponevezher Rav was the rabbi who established the Ponevezher Yeshiva here in Eretz Yisrael. He was the Rosh Yeshiva in Ponevezher itself in Eastern Europe. And during the Second World War, he came and re-established the yeshiva over here. And he used to go traveling around the world in order to raise money for the yeshiva. And he was very close to Rabbi Wein. Rabbi Wein used to take him around in Miami to all the various, wealthy people that were able to give money. And he once took him to the grandson of one of the original donors. And of course, American history, the grandfather was frum and the father wasn't frum and the grandson really wasn't frum. The grandson was very frum in his not being frum, right? Took it very seriously, his not being frum. And the grandson told him, he says, I'm not giving you a penny. And Ponevezher Rav said, it's something you over the last, whatever it was, 25 years, your grandfather used to give and your father used to give. He says, I'm not giving you a penny. He says, I don't care what they used to do. He says, I'm not giving you anything. I don't believe in this stuff. And the Ponevezher Rav left the office together with Rabbi Wein, and he got into the car, and Rabbi Wein said the Ponevezher Rav started to cry. And Rabbi Wein didn't really know what to do. So finally he says to him, Rebbe, he says, it's okay, I don't know what this person used to give, like $1,000 a year or something, which in those days was like a pretty significant donation, right? And he says, Rebbe, he says, don't cry. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you the $1,000 from somewhere else. And the Ponevezher Rav said, he says, I'm not crying about the money. He says, I don't care about the money for sure. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to have it, I'll get it. He says, but the one last contact that this fellow had in his life that made him Jewish was donating to the yeshiva. And now he's not doing that, and he's now disconnecting not just himself, but his children and his grandchildren that come afterwards. That's pretty scary, right? So yeah, not eating cheese on your bacon burger is I don't know. You're connected somehow. You're connected. You're still there.
And one says, he says, no, I don't want no cheese. So I asked him, I didn't tell him religious what. I says, how come, He says, well, my father and my grandfather would not mix
Meat and milk. Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Not religious at all. I mean, he was like, forget it.
Yeah.
Goes back.
Of course, in Jewish jokes, they tell it over a little bit differently, right? The fellow who comes to the rabbi says, I want to be a Kohen. So the rabbi says, what do you want to be a Kohen? He says, you can't be a Kohen, that's ridiculous. So he says, no, really, Rabbi, I want to be a Kohen. He says, cut it out, you can't be. He says, Rabbi, I'm prepared to pay. He says, really? He says, why didn't you say so? I think we can arrange something. So he places his hands on top of this fellow's head and he mumbles something. He says, okay, that's it, now you're a Kohen. And then he says to him, after the fellow's given over his check, he says to him, tell me, he says, why was it so important for you to be a Kohen? He says, are you kidding? My father was a Kohen and my grandfather was a Kohen. He says, I want to be a Kohen too. Whatever, Jewish humor. Okay. Anyway, one of the things that's done, of course, is something called Hagbah. Again, all these things are very beautiful. It's just we take them all for granted. We don't really think about them. But after the Sefer Torah has been read from, after the Parsha has been finished, before the Haftorah is going to be read, the Sefer Torah is lifted up and shown to everybody. Right? The person holding the Sefer Torah is going to turn around so everybody can see. There needs to be a minimum of 3 columns that are being shown to everybody. According to one opinion, you need to have 5 columns. Whatever. And everybody points at it and says V'zois habracha, V'zois haTorah, and then they sit down and they roll it up and they cover it up, and then the brachas for the Haftarah begin.
Is it counterclockwise you're supposed to do it? Or is
according to the opinion that I know of, you're supposed to turn around once in it.
Once to the left.
Once.
Right.
What is this? Counterclockwise, going around that way.
Yeah. Counterclockwise,
Not the whole way.
Yeah.
Stop and then turn around clockwise and go the whole way.
So the other person
Okay.
on that side can see.
I heard a cute joke from Rabbi Schiller, not a Schiller, the Rosh Hashiva. He says that this weedy, Baal Tshuva, very, very frail fellow, comes to a shul one Shabbos and they want to offer him Hagbah.
I love that joke.
Right? So he sort of gets up over there and he's like staggering around with this thing, and everyone's like, he's like convinced he's going to drop it. He's like he's weak as can be, and like finally somebody grabs a hold of the top and somebody grabs a hold of the bottom, and they finally get this thing all rolled up. And everyone's like breathing a sigh of relief, and the fellow says, "This can't be." He says, this can't carry on like this. I've got to do something. What will happen the next time I come to this shul? It's so embarrassing. So he goes off to the gym, and he starts working out. And every day he's working out, and for months and months, until finally he sort of turns into one of these, one of these, right? And anyway, he goes back to that shul, and sure enough, he gets caught up again, and he goes bouncing up onto the, there are 4 steps to go up to the bim. He takes them all in one go, jumps up onto the top, lifts up the Sefer Torah, opens it up, 10 columns, and then pirouettes on 1 foot. He just turns around like that, swirls around, and then turns around to the governor. He says, how was that? So the governor says, he says for Rabbi, it wasn't bad at all. He'd been given an aliyah to make brachas over the Amid, over the Sefer Torah, and he didn't realize, and he just went and opened it up. Whatever, that's, Baal Tshuva humor, I guess.
What is the origin of...
I don't know what the origins are at all, actually. I'm not sure anybody does. The pinky... There is an Indian. It's interesting. If you take a look in many, there's something that's called a yad, which when you read from the Sefer Torah, is like a silver pointer, and at the end, invariably, there's a little hand, and in lots of them, the hand looks like that, with the pinky sticking out, and some of them it'll be the pointer, but with the pinky sticking out. I don't know where the origin is particularly for using your pinky to point and to point at the Sefer Torah, but the idea of pointing at the Sefer Torah is something which is obviously very basic, right? It's being lifted up and shown to everybody, and you're pointing to direct your attention towards what it is that you're supposed to be looking at. The sages explain, when Moshe Rabbeinu, when the Jewish people went to war against Amalek, and he went up onto the top of the mountain and he sat on the rock and he lifted his hands up, and when his hands were lifted up, the Jewish army were victorious, and when his hands dropped down, the Amalekite army was victorious. And so they explain, the sages explain that when he had his hands up in the air, he was directing the Jewish people's thoughts towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, towards God. Right? And when his hands dropped down, then they started, their minds were distracted away from Hashem. And in the end, it says that Hur and Aaron, one took one hand and one took the other hand, and they held his hands up to be able to complete the battle. So it's the idea of when you use your hands to point at something, you're pointing at something, right? It becomes more real for you. It becomes something more tangible. Thank you. You don't normally applaud. That was
I like that point.
much appreciated. Thank you.
Anytime.
Anyway, okay, I think we're going to stop over here. Mitzvah Hashem.